I stared out at the endless expanse of the inky black sea. The eerie silence broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the hull of our fishing boat. The air was thick with a dense fog that swirled around us, obscuring everything beyond the horizon from view. It was as if we were suspended in a void, isolated from the rest of the world. My name is Jack, and I've been a commercial fisherman for the better part of my life. Countless nights spent on the open water had hardened me to the peculiarities and occasional terrors that the sea could throw our way, or so I thought. This particular night, however, something was unsettling in the air. A palpable sense of dread that crept up my spine like icy tendrils. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it away as mere superstition. The gentle rocking of our fishing boat did little to soothe the growing sense of unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. Beside me, my old deckhand Mick squinted into the darkness, his weathered face etched with concern. "You feel it too, don't you?" he spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the eerie silence that surrounded us. "Something ain't right, Captain." I nodded, trying to keep my composure. I feel it all right. There's something out there, Mick. Something not quite right." Mick's lined face contorted into a grim expression, his eyes scanning the fog-shrouded waters with a mixture of fear and wariness. "I've been on these seas for longer than I care to remember, but I ain't never felt a chill like this before." We fell silent once more, the only sound the creaking of the boat's timbers as it rocked gently on the swell. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. The tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. My eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. That's when I saw it. A ghostly silhouette cutting through the inky blackness. My heart stuttered as the form solidified into the unmistakable hull of a ship, drifting dangerously close. "Starboard side!" I barked, grabbing the wheel and spinning it hard into port, narrowly avoiding a collision with the drifting vessel. As we pulled alongside the other ship, an eerie silence hung in the air. No lights, no crew on deck. Nothing but the creaking of its timbers and an unnatural stillness. It was as if the entire vessel had been abandoned, left to drift aimlessly across the vastness of the sea. "What in blazes happened here?" Mick murmured, his brow furrowed with confusion and a hint of fear. Before I could respond, the thick fog began to roll in, enveloping us in a dense, swirling mist that obscured everything more than a few feet away. The air grew heavy and oppressive, and a chill crept up my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Batten down, lads," I called out gruffly. "Looks like we're in for a thick one. There's more than just the sea at play here tonight." As if on cue, a faint whisper seemed to drift through the mist, carried on the gentle breeze. At first, I thought it was merely the wind playing tricks on my mind. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they coalesced into a cacophony of unintelligible murmurs. "You boys hear that?" I growled out to my deckhands. Soren, one of my more experienced men, nodded slowly. "Hey, Skip, I hear it." The whispering rose and fell like waves on a restless shore. I squared my shoulders, trying to project more bravado than I felt. "Probably just the fog playing tricks is all. You'll be hearing banshees next, you daft sods." My words were rewarded with a feeble chuckle from the men. Better to laugh it off than let the dread take hold. The stories of old came flooding back to me, tales of cursed ships and vengeful spirits that stalked the depths, dragging unsuspecting sailors down to a watery grave. Davy Jones's locker, the sailors called it, a fate worse than death itself. As the whispers swirled around us, growing ever louder and more menacing, I caught sight of another abandoned vessel drifting through the fog, its sails tattered and torn. Then another and yet another, each one as silent and lifeless as the last. Mick's face was ashen as he stared at the apparitions all around us. "God's blood, it's like they're beckoning to us, Captain. Summit wants us to join their ranks out there in the gloom." I swallowed hard against the lump of primal fear constricting my throat. Because the superstitious old salt was right. With each new, ravaged form slipping from the mists, that spectral whispering grew more insistent, more maddening. An inexplicable, visceral urge stirred within me to cast off from the relative safety of our boat and let ourselves become enveloped by that spectral fog. Fear gripped my heart like a vice, but I knew I had to keep my wits about me if we were to survive this nightmare. "Keep about your work," I ordered brusquely, "and pay it no mind. We'll see our way clear yet." With a steadying breath, I spun the wheel hard to starboard, setting a course that would hopefully lead us away from the ghostly fleet that had us surrounded. The whispers grew more frantic, as if whatever malevolent force was behind them sensed our intent to escape. The fog seemed to press in closer, obscuring even the crew, leaving us adrift in the sea of impenetrable darkness. Suddenly, a faint noise pierced the stillness, a low, mournful wail that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was a sound that chilled me to the bone, a primal cry that spoke of ancient horrors and unspeakable depths. "What in God's name was that?" Mick's voice trembled, his already pale complexion turning ashen. Mick's terrified whimpers reached my ears, but I blocked them out, focusing all my attention on navigating through the treacherous waters. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to flee, to put as much distance between us and this cursed place as humanly possible. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the whispers began to fade, and the fog thinned ever so slightly. In the distance, I could make out the faint glimmer of the shoreline, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness that had nearly consumed us. With renewed determination, I pushed the engine to its limits, the boat cutting through the waves like a knife, carrying us ever closer to safety. As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, we finally reached the harbor, our vessel battered but intact, our lives miraculously spared. Mick and the rest of the lads collapsed onto the docks, their faces ashen and bodies still trembling from the horrors we had endured. I too felt the weight of the night's events bearing down on me, a heaviness that seemed to seep into my very soul. In all my years on the sea, I had never encountered anything like what we had witnessed that night. The abandoned ships, the disembodied whispers, the oppressive fog. It was as if we had brushed up against something ominous, a malign presence that had tried to claim us out there in the foggy waters. A shudder ran through me, but I knew in my heart that this would not be the end of my days on the sea. A fisherman's life is inextricably tied to the ocean, for better or worse. We live by the sea and die by the sea, beholden to its mysteries and its dangers. Mick seemed to sense my resolution, his eyes meeting mine with a grim understanding. "You ain't thinking of going back out there, are you, Captain?" he asked, his voice tinged with trepidation. I offered him a resolute nod. "Aye, lad, the sea is in my blood for all its terrors. We'll take on supplies, reinforce the hull, and set sail again come the next tide." Mick's shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue further. We had witnessed the horrors that lurked beneath the waves, but we were cut from a different cloth than most. The call of the ocean was one we could not resist, no matter the cost. As we made our preparations, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim determination settle over me. The sea had thrown its worst at us, and we had survived. Next time, we would be ready, prepared to face whatever evils lay in wait. If the sea claimed us, then that would be a fisherman's fate.